This is a list of ingredients from foods: carrageenan, riboflavin, monosodium glutamate, and 20 others that I can't pronounce.
Help make America healthy again. What's your vision? What does that look like to you?
Thank you, Senator Marshall. We're having epidemics of all these chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, neurological diseases, allergic diseases, obesity. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans were obese. Today, 74% of Americans are obese or overweight. No other country has anything like this. In Japan, the obesity rate is still 3%. And epidemics are not caused by genes. Genes may provide the vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. Something is poisoning the American people. And we know that the primary culprits are changing food supply, the switch to highly chemical intensive processed foods. We have 10,000 ingredients in our country, in our foods. The Europeans have only 400. If you buy McDonald's French fries in our country, there's 11 ingredients, my understanding. In Europe, there's only 3. If you buy Fruit Loops in our country, they're loaded with food dyes, with yellow dye, red dye, blue dye, and many other ingredients. The same company makes the same product with different ingredients for Canada and Europe. And at age, we don't have good science on all these things. And that is deliberate. That's a deliberate choice, not to study the things that are truly making us sick, that are not only contributing to chronic disease, but to mortalities from infectious disease. We need to get a handle on this, because if we don't, it's an existential threat. Our country is not going to be destroyed because we get the marginal tax rate wrong, or because we get one of these culture war issues that we've been talking about today wrong. It's going to be destroyed if we continue down this trajectory of chronic disease. We need to fix our food supply, and that's the number one.
Food is, of course, a huge business. American consumers spend an estimated $1.7 trillion a year on food and beverages. There are thousands of substances included in our foods, and many consumers may assume that the government is strictly regulating these ingredients.
David, I want to read you a statistic.
That is not necessarily the case.
I want your thoughts on this statistic. Is it correct that ultra-processed foods now make up 70% of the U.S. food supply? What is happening? How is that true?
Well, research has found that ultra-processed foods do represent 72% of the food supply. What are ultra-processed foods? Difficult to draw the line, but one common denominator might be they include ingredients that you wouldn't find in your home kitchen, in your pantry, and chemicals that are not found in nature.
One of the things that I think troubles people about additives is they're able to be added to the generally safe list of additives just by kind of decree of the food companies. It's crazy but true. Do I have that right?
Tony, absolutely right. Back in the 1950s, the government mandated that food additives receive regulatory approval, but it carved out a huge exception. It said that substances that were generally recognized as safe, GRAS for short, did not need FDA approval. Instead, they could be used based on the assumption that they are safe. And over time, as some consumer advocates have written, the loophole came to swallow the law. There are 2 pathways by which that might happen. The first is that companies might voluntarily submit their ingredients, their additives, to the FDA for an informal review that might result in a sort of tacit, you can go ahead and use these ingredients. Or, and this is more the focus of Senator Kennedy's latest statements, or companies could on their own determine that their ingredients are generally recognized as safe. And they could use those ingredients in foods without informing the FDA, without getting the FDA's approval.
Oh man, David. And also, food makers don't have to disclose all their ingredients on the label.
Perhaps the greatest lie ever perpetrated on populations all over the world is the condensation trail lie. What we're seeing in our skies is not condensation. It's sprayed particulate dispersions with very few exceptions.
But they shouldn't be there. Jet engines burn clean. So if there's anything coming out of them, it's an additive.
They're absolutely not contrails. Contrails do not linger, dissipate, and go into cloud coverage, period, in the report.
And I kept saying to people, what is this? Because now the sky is no longer blue, it's starting to turn gray. And what I found was kind of like, it was not socially acceptable. We're all going to pretend this is not really happening. And I thought, this is very bad.
Most are unfamiliar with the science term called global dimming. That term refers to the amount of direct sunlight that no longer reaches the surface of the planet due to light-scattering particles that are building up in the atmosphere. And although many of these particles are from industrialized pollution, the larger majority are from the ongoing climate engineering solar radiation management operations.